So we have a really special day today. This is special for me. Veronika Bond and Alisa Kennedy Jones are joining me today for an Unfixed interview as we dive deeply into Mary Tabor's exquisite piece that she shared just recently about her son's death. And this piece has been swirling around in her own life for years, and it took quite a lot to bring it forth into the Substack community. And I feel the vulnerability of that. And so I thought, instead of sharing a conversation just me and Mary, how about we open up a warm hearth? And through the comments that were shared, the abundance of comments that were shared after Mary opened the story to Substack, it was clear that Alisa and Veronika needed to be part of this. So welcome, everyone. I'm so happy that you're here. Mary, can you begin just by telling us what that was like for you to share this on Monday of this week? I know that there was some tentativeness around opening it up, and what was that like for you?
The response was so extraordinary, and the way my heart has already opened from the writing of it, it expanded exponentially with every comment and every like, and I didn't expect any of this to happen because of, if you haven't read the essay, the format of the essay is notes, and it seems fragmented. And even though it is fragmented, it does form, I guess you guys will tell me, but I think it forms a whole out of these notes that I was taking like a child in school. And so to have this be out in the world, let me honor my son and feel as if my creativity had come back to me.
Mm. Wow. What a powerful experience. And you took a dive into the darkness, not knowing if it would be received. And you did that also with publishers.
I tried.
Yeah.
It took me 5 years to write. He died in 2000. My son died at age 46. For those who don't know, my son died at age 46 in 2017. And so I tried, since I come out of the world of the literary magazine, I've believed in it. And so I tried, but all I ever got was the form. And the form means no thank you, essentially. No comment, nothing. And I thought, well, I guess it's not worthy because I did so many. And then as the anniversary of his death, which is November 4th, came upon me, I withdrew it from wherever it was and I put it up on Only Connect on Substack. And the reaction was mind-blowingly empathic and detailed in terms of what I say in the essay, details on passages. It just gave me a sense that the grief has indeed been a lifeboat.
Yes. So I want to get into that. Veronika and Alisa, do you have, in your reading of this, do you have moments or passages that really spoke to you, or questions that you have about those?
I mean, I loved the form that you chose, but I would love to understand more of, I think it was wonderful how you placed yourself, I think, as that child. And again, as that child at at the fore. When I was listening to you read it, I think that really came out for me for the first time, because I had focused on the lifeboat image and being sort of without a mooring on the sea and casting around for a mooring in this sort of sea of grief that would also hold you, that would also
Exactly.
but at the same time, in its roiling way, tear you apart. And that being a paradox of itself, but then also when I was listening to it again, being this small child at the door, making those sort of quiet notes about, this is what I know, this is what I know, this is how I hold this. And so that structure, it's almost like
Mm.
a child standing before a red schoolhouse, but also a child standing before an ocean for the first time
Yeah.
and regarding the ocean for the first time. And the first time a child holds a shell to their ear, maybe. And so I started thinking about that. And you hear the ocean, which is really like in the shell, and how that becomes a whole sensory diving off point that you then carry into these images of how he haunts you or how he comes to you.
Yes. That's a perfect description, actually, of the process, because the process was one of individual notes that I wrote during the most severe period of the grieving, which is the grieving doesn't, by the way, grief has its own voice. That's the one thing I learned about all of this. It has its own voice. And also that it doesn't go away. People, at least I haven't gotten better. I've changed the force of the rolling sea of grief, because I keep using water as a way to describe what this has been like, including the floating and including the sense of drowning. Both, that paradox operates all through I think it operates all through the essay. And that expression of how the notes were separate, and then one day at some point I sat down and looked at the notes and thought, I think they can be put together, but the only way they can be put together is as the notes of a child, as Alisa has just expressed so beautifully, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you, Mary, Alisa. That was just a beautiful metaphor for the holding and also the chaos. And Mary, I feel like you do an incredible job of allowing both of those seemingly opposite forces to coexist. And that's hard for humans to do, to know that they can coexist. And I'm wondering if do you have your piece in front of you? Because I would love for you to.
I do. So I can read a piece of it, or whichever
Yeah.
note you would like me to read, or.
Well, I was thinking in particular, note number 3. Let's start with
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Okay. His death brought me to my knees. Every time I thought I could get up, I saw his body clothed in a non-Jewish funeral home on a gurney. His plaid flannel short sport shirt, his blue jeans. They dressed him, something we Jews do not do. I expected to see him in a shroud with his head on a marble pedestal the way I saw my mother for the last time. But there he was, dressed as if ready to hike or do chores or sit at his laptop that I now have.
I mean, talk about paradox. This.
The mundane with the most significant thing that you can see as a mother in your life.
Yeah. it's guts something in us. Like, how can those two things live alongside one another?
And also
And it makes, go ahead, Alisa.
this notion that life is just going to progress on
Mm-hmm.
this moment, and that he could just arise at any moment, but that's not going to happen.
And that
Yeah.
comes back in the essay with my hearing him and believing that I'm hearing him on the phone. This haunting feeling. There's also something I'd like to give. I'd like to give credit to Joan Didion for a moment. In one of the things I read after he died was I had read um, and owned her book, The Year of Miracle Thinking, but she also wrote a book called Blue Nights, which followed that. And in it, she says, what greater, well, here, Euripides says this, what greater grief can there be for mortals than to see their children dead? Euripides said that. When we talk about mortality, we are talking about our children. I said that. And I think that's not something I would put in the essay, but it's something that I think fits with what we're saying right here now, that the responsibility of motherhood is to see our children survive
Mm-hmm.
and flourish.
Yeah. I mean, there is even even in the most difficult relationships between parents and their children, the complex relationships, I think. And we see a lot of this in popular culture right now, especially in the current climate.
Mm-hmm.
There is a want, such a primal desire to know that the kids are all right.
Mm-hmm.
And not to
Yes.
make light, but that they're thriving, that persistence, that
Mm-hmm.
that you could take whatever pain they're experiencing and return it to them as love, that you could absorb it and return it to them as love.
Yeah.
Even if they're mad at you, even if they say, you don't understand me, even if you're having a moment.
And that love nourishes them
Yes.
and helps them thrive.
Thriving.
And so for death to come and say,
steal it.
nope, I have the upper hand here, is the ultimate assault
And
to.
what feels unmournable is when you can't get a why sometimes. And that's where I think the poetry of the voice, of the haunting, of the visitation, of whatever story or narrative can be almost soothing in a way, because you're reconstructing reasoning. And mom, the moment where he says to you, you were a terrible poker player.
Yes.
I get that. I'm a terrible poker player too. I'm a crooked one. When you said that, my whole heart went, oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when he flew me to Australia where he lived, and he said, you hate to travel, and I beamed you. I
Yeah.
beamed you, like Scotty. I
Yeah.
beamed you. And he did. And he did. And the love that you're talking about, I hope that comes through in the essay, because we
Oh,
had that. And
a playful love. I mean, it sounds like a real playful love. Is that accurate?
yes, not always,
Yeah.
but almost always, and but also the constant contact, because he was I was in touch with him for the last 10 years of his life. He talked to me every single day,
Wow.
and sometimes more often than once or twice. I mean, he was really in touch with me, really so intimately, that the loss of that voice, the loss of that phone call, well, there's a great deal of silence that surrounds death in any case, But the silence that surrounds the death of an adult child is impenetrable.
Mm.
And I was trying with the essay to break through that silence also.
Well, I'm so glad that you use that word, Mary, because this is why it makes me so mad that the publishers didn't understand this, because you needed to work that silence into the writing, and you did. You did it for me through the notes. The notes have pauses. They require pauses after you read each one. There's a place that I want to go to and envision and exhale and breathe with what you just shared. And if it had been anything other, there would not be that necessary silence that is part of your grieving. So,
Well, that means so much to me that you say that, because the fragmented style, I think, is the most challenging part of the essay. And for you to say that is such a gift. Thank you.
all of it works, but that is what takes it to this next level for me.
Yeah, I think the fragmented style is what enables me to actually really see it and see every frame of the film in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the ocean calls to me too. The ocean becomes for me something that pulls me towards the close.
Mm-hmm.
The ocean is everything for me inside this essay, and I can't explain that except by maybe reading one of the passages.
Let's do that.
I could read the passage where the ocean speaks to me, and let me see if I can I should be better prepared for something like this, but so there's the haunting where he haunts me like a fire, and that's okay. My grief is like the ocean. This is note number 12. My grief is like the ocean, and here is what she says. I stand on a way above you. You see me, you hear me, you want me. But when I call to you, you don't think I know you, see you, hear you, want you. But I do. Maybe even more than you want me. I am dressed in a chiffon dress that mirrors the sea your son loved. So it is not sky blue, it is green blue. Some days as green as his eyes that were so sad, that saw what was coming, that couldn't overcome, but tried.
I had a massive epiphany with this one, and it was so fun. And Mary, you know about this, but I read it, digested, and then went outside and was thinking about it again, and then listened to it when I was outside. And all of a sudden, I understood that your grief is the lifeboat sitting on top of that ocean. And I thought, oh, what an incredible thought. What an incredible concept. And a message for all of humanity to understand that these dark places can save us when we allow them to. I picture like the vulnerability that you were experiencing reached outwards, like a net almost across the ocean to reach all the others that were experiencing.
And the very fact that you could see that, and we had a conversation before this recording in which Kimberly told me that she saw that the grief is the lifeboat. And that seems so paradoxical. And yet that is what I was trying to express by the time I got to the close of the essay.
Mm.
And it isn't just a lifeboat for me, but for a lifeboat for anyone who reads this.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
hope.
you saw that in the comments, because you saw in the comments people saying across Substack, and there were so many comments across the notes, I want to be in the lifeboat with you.
Yes.
And the lifeboat
exactly.
like a safe, not just use that word all the time, but safe space, but a sacred space to be with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's very meaningful right now, especially in our current zeitgeist.
My
Yes.
goodness, yes. Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, I think our culture wants or teaches us to isolate with the pain, isolate with the grief, and it is something to hide. It's something to process on your own because it's awkward. But when we can all go, oh my God, I'm feeling this too, and let's
So,
all dive in together.
yeah, so it's a way in which I was thrown a line. I'm in the sea, I'm floating in this ocean of the sea of loss. And a line is thrown to me. The line that's most often thrown when not, and I don't mean to denigrate it in any way, but is, sorry for your loss. But in the responses to this essay, so much more was said about what is
Mm,
in the essay and what the feeling was in response to it. And I say this to anyone who's to meet another person. And of course, we all meet people who will lose people who are grieving and who are desolate. The way to reach out is to throw more than that line, not to denigrate that line, but to say something personal, the way you react to anything that's happened to you or anything that you say that's more throws the line to the person in the lifeboat and pulls them towards you and pulls them to Alisa's safe place.
mm, mhm. Wow, that's beautifully said. I want to know, Mary, you mentioned about needing this that Alisa mentioned earlier. You need to go back to school. Felt this need to go back to school after your son's death, um, in order to relearn life. And I love that contrast there, the death and the relearning life. Can you share a little bit more about what you learned? What's this relearning about? And has that transformed for you over time?
Well, first, let me explain what happened to me when he died in the sense that everything stopped for me. So I'm a writer, I'm a painter, I play the flute. Um, Everything stopped. And I didn't think that I could begin anything creative. It was as if my life had been ended, even though I didn't die. And I almost did because I developed a condition known as heartbreak syndrome. But I'm not going to go into that. I'm fine now. I'm fine. But you can die of heartbreak, and I was very much at that point. But what happened when I began to write the notes is that I began to come back. I was coming back to the page through note by note, each note that I wrote, even though there are many more than are in the essay, but the notes kept coming and I kept journaling and collecting them. And then one day I sit down and I begin to pull them together. And the next day I do a watercolor, although there is a watercolor in the piece that I actually did when I went to Australia for his memorial. And I did a watercolor on the wrong surface, which I refer to in the essay, because all that I had was A2 paper and I had a few little watercolor pieces in a little container with me. So what I learned is that even though one doesn't recover, there is a basic foundation, and that foundation is the choice to choose life. And choosing life is what we must do when we lose somebody. And it's not easy to do,
Mm,
but it can be done. And there's a foundation that I had inside of me that held me in some paradoxical way and
mm.
let me begin again.
Wow. Choosing life obviously involves choosing pain and madness and suffer. I mean, when you say life, it's like it's so easy to say I choose life, but choosing life means inviting all the yucky, horrible, debilitating things along with it. So that is an incredible act.
And engaging and opening my heart instead of closing it. It's so easy to shut down because shutting down is what essentially happens
Mm-hmm.
in the initial moments of discovery of this death that is so out of order. And
Yeah.
I guess out of order is the main message I have. It's so out of order.
Yeah. Alisa, you know about out of order
I
with your
do.
own.
I do. I mean, I think when something happens like this, it feels like all your cells reorganize in real time in a split second. I mean, that's certainly what a seizure feels like when you've swallowed a bolt of lightning. But I think that with something like a death like this, what I see in what reflected in the opening of the essay in Relearning Life is something that I also feel when I'm waking up from a seizure, which is this kind of
You
begin.
should explain because not everybody's going to know.
I have to,
So explain
Yeah.
a little bit because we know because we've read your book and we read you and we know. But you should take some time to tell about this because it's part of this experience, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I suffer from these grand mal seizures. They started when I was 40. They are tonic-clonic seizures, and they are gorgeous and beautiful, but also terrifying. They strike almost without warning. Usually I have a tiny bit of warning, which is the world starts to shimmer, and I also hear music. And
Mm.
so there's a little bit of warning to get to a soft space, but when they
Hmm.
come, they are quite severe, and they can cause a great deal of injury and damage, and they're quite traumatic for people around me. When I wake up from them, the world is Technicolor beginner's mind, and what I felt in your essay of waking up when you're standing at the beginning in front of the schoolhouse is that beginner's mind of relearning life. Because when I wake up from a seizure, it's like I have to relearn how to speak again. I mean, I've suffered injuries where I have had full facial reconstruction and had to learn how to talk all over again. But even with a seizure where that doesn't happen, you still have to get your words back and all the things. And so
Yes.
relearning life and feeling that beginner's mind piece is something that I identified so strongly with in your essay.
Wow. On a cellular level.
On a cellular level, I was like, I have to relearn life. And
Yeah.
it's like dying on repeat. And it's really hard to engage back and say, I choose life again. I'm going to engage with the mess again,
Mm.
with the riotous nature of living.
Mm.
But one of the things I say is I'm turned inside out like a sweater, and you were turned inside out, and I was turned inside out.
And I
Yeah.
love how you say, I'm turned inside out, and the outside it's not pretty anymore. It's not
Yeah.
perfect anymore. It's got knots
Yeah,
and threads and all of that. And I was like, yes,
Yes.
that is
I
it.
love that visual so much. And
yeah.
it because
The raw threads, the tied knots from the sweater I might have knitted are now on the outside. It doesn't matter what clothes I put on, how lovely the long black jacket I wear flows. The raw knots of the sweater where the end stitch is tied off to begin another row, to knit, purl, knit, show. I have no good side anymore.
That is how I feel so much.
yeah, it is so brilliant.
And yeah, and that that is
And for me, I don't know. I mean, I dabbled in fiber arts and stuff, but for me, the inside out sweater is more inviting, more cozy. Like I want to see all those it makes me want to like cuddle up with it. And maybe this is a terrible metaphor, but for me, that inside out sweater says vulnerability.
I
It
want
says
those
I'm
frayed edges.
yeah. Like in fact, I like those sweaters that are intentionally, frayed and they have all that. It makes you want to go up and hug them.
You know, the two of you are like a lifeboat because you see me here in intense grief and I'm smiling. And that the two of you can do that for me by just having this conversation with me. This is what I mean by throwing a line and throwing good lines, lines that really pull one in from the paradox of all the losses that we face in existence.
Yeah. It could be really lonely out there without someone throwing a line.
Yeah. And we have a lot of shame, I think, across our generations about showing our pain and showing and confessional culture because it gives us the ick sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, and I think, Alisa, another thing that I had to do in the learn, and this goes back to your question, Kimberly, about the learning. I had to realize that in order for this essay to have a creative life, in other words, to be something more than catharsis, it couldn't operate on the basis of sentimentality. It had to operate in a different way. And that's why it took so long to write, because to get from catharsis to imagistic work, which is where I hope I landed, took a while to get to that place. Although the notes came out oddly very early imagistically, and they were all over the place, and then the organizing of them was key to the process of not only pulling him towards me, but pulling my heart both together and open. And there's a paradox there too, apart and open. As it tore apart, it was as if a lake filled inside of me for anyone who's fallen to come in.
Oh, yes. Wow. Mary, you wrote about that lake in one of your notes. Can you read that one? Because you just, the way you just described it now, it just took it to another level for me, that note.
I've learned my heart is a lake where something has fallen. A splash appears and stays. Fronds of water rise around what has fallen. The splash, instead of a return to surface calm, stays open and splayed. That open water with risen water all around the fallen place is an open hand and palm that takes in the wounded and the lost. You, my son, my love, are in that splayed and open space. Did you know that with your loss, my heart has opened and deepened, and that the place for falling remains? The falling of the fallen, the falling of the hurt, the space remains ready and waiting for any to enter. You made that place for me, an open heart that will not close, an opening whose surface is broken but not fractured. The fronds of water around the fallen are clear gray-blue. Light shines through. In the opening, you see a soft place to fall, a soft place a safe place to fall, a place that catches you, surrounds you with the waters of my tears and the water of all the seas you loved. It is a call. It is an answer. Come, my heart says, come.
Oh, oh my goodness. Mary. The heart that is open and will never close. That open cupped hand, receiving the tears, receiving the water, receiving it all of it. This is such an incredible story of the paradox that we all live and pretend doesn't exist. And you had to just step right into it. And then again, every day you wake up, you still have to step into it.
Well, this is not in the essay, but one of the things that's not in the essay and that I wouldn't dare put into the essay because it does fall into the area of cathartic talk, but I actually had to perform the funeral because the rabbi was not available. There wasn't anyone who could do it, and we, in my tradition, very quickly. And I closed the um, the eulogy, in addition to running the entire service, which I don't know how I ever did, with A.E. Housman. And here is what A.E. Housman says in this very famous poem. The time you won your town the race, we cheered you through the marketplace. Man and boy stood by cheering, and home we brought you, shoulder high. And I hoped when the essay came out that that would be part, it's not in the essay, of course, but that would be part of the message, that is how I closed the eulogy before the coffin was taken out to take him to the burial place.
Mm.
This has been such a gracious thing for the two of you to do today. I want you to know how much I thank you for it and how much it means to me to close the round, in a sense, in this way, to be seen by the two of you. And to anyone who may be listening, to any of you, I say, my heart goes out to you.
I think this is such, what you've done with your essay and your experience in sharing it is such a gift. I know you've suffered so greatly for it, but it's such a gift to the community, to the literary community, to the Substack community, to the women's community, and so that we have a more nuanced understanding of grief and how it manifests and how it changes and how it shapes the narratives of our lives and how we can coexist with it. It's so powerful what you've done. And I just want to thank you and express my gratitude to you. Dear
And
heart.
it's a teacher for all of us that have or will or have yet to grieve, to use whatever voice that is within us. And for you, Mary, it was to write these notes, to use your creative expression, to navigate these dark, dark, dark waters. And something in all of us, there's a way, and I even have heard this yesterday, on the heels of all the election news, their artists will come forward during this time, or well, actually they'll retreat. The artists will go in and digest and somehow eventually find beauty and meaning from the pain and the loss and the devastation. And so you, Mary, are tying these knots for us through your creative expression.
Well, that may say more than I'm worth, but I thank you from my heart for what you've just said.
You are absolutely doing that. I have no doubt. Veronika, welcome back. I don't know if she can hear us, but I think she's been coming in and out. I keep entering her back into the room. So I don't know how much you've been hearing, but we have bad Wi-Fi connection, but it's lovely to see you here again.
And Veronika's comment on what I had written was so extraordinary that I actually saved it here.
Do you want to read it?
Well, I have what I responded to, so I don't have her comment exactly in front of me, but it was so moving in terms of understanding what I had tried to do. It was as if she restated the essence of the essay in what she wrote. I think we've lost her one more time. But her and with that said, I did say to her, my dear Veronika, your words come to me from your loss of your brother to the ocean that to me is like a sea of tears from all the losses we the living must bear. The beauty of your words, the empathy you cast on me, And this essay gave me courage that has been disappearing, like losing my sense of being. As the notes emerged as a form I saw anew. And that was in direct response to what Veronika wrote to me in her comment on the essay.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel as if I know you across the sea, that we both see so in so many images.
There's a profound mirroring that happens on Substack, or at least within this special community that we've found on Substack. I don't know if it's all across, but there is a profound mirroring. And I just realized that through that mirroring comes courage. I don't think I ever made that connection before, but I think mirroring emboldens us to keep going.
So well said.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And courage when people are feeling exhausted and tired to the bone. And that's so important, I think.
Yeah. Mary, I want to ask a question. This is a personal curiosity because I always like to read you as with a little pipe in my mouth and a little investigator's cap on, because you embed so many layers of meaning in your writing, and sometimes I'm just like, okay, I have to figure this out. What does she mean? And one of your notes takes us out of the story of your son and into the book, note number 10. Can you read that and then tell us a little
Yes.
bit about where you were going with that?
Okay. So in note number 10, I said, I wrote a book that closes with a story that begins. There once was a woman with 327 cookbooks who never cooked. Recipes chronicle the losses of my mother, my sister, and my father. The story opens with the Talmudic quandary. Two men are in the desert, only one of them has water. And if the one who has the water shares it, both will die. If he drinks all the water, one will live. The woman remembers this question. What should he do? The story closes after all have died, and she's figured out what was missing from the recipe for a lemon meringue pie that failed so many times it had become a joke in her family. At the story's end, the woman who is me figures out what was missing from the recipe. She says, I did not know what I deserved or what was just, but I knew I would make the pie, that it would be hard to make, and that it would be my favorite. And I think you're asking me what the end of that story is, or what was missing from the
What
recipe.
was
Are you
missing
asking
from
that?
the pie? I mean, I have my suspicions, but I want to hear from you.
And so I wrote this down because you did send that question to me before, and I had to think about what I should do with this, because of course the woman who never cooked, that's written like a fairy tale but is in fact memoir, is in this book I've written, and of course was written before my son died. And at the end of the story, she who is me says she could not remember the recipe for a single dessert. She heard inside her head that one repeated word, desserts. She stared so hard one S inside the titles on the binders dropped away. She saw just desserts, spelled like the place where the two men in the Talmudic question stood. What did she deserve? There she stood with her father, her mother, and her sister, gone. She believed that she had all the water. Would she drink it? No, she thought, because suddenly she knew what was missing from the recipe. From the yellow ribbon of lemon that would not congeal, she knew that the water must go in the pie, mixed first with a bit of cornstarch for the sweetness to hold firm. She did not know what she deserved or what was just. She knew only that she would make the pie, that it would be hard to make, and that it would be her favorite. You ask, what does that mean? And I have to leave that answer to you.
Okay. I read this and I hear a mother who has chosen to share her water and in the sharing of that water knows that this is going to hurt. This is going to hurt like hell, and part of me is going to die in the doing it. But it will be my favorite pie. That's what I read in this. It's that this is, the metaphor of creation of your son, and that you, in the creation of this son and the love that you will offer, you are giving part of yourself, your own life away in that sharing, and that it's going to hurt, but it will always be your favorite. I don't know.
The Talmudic question is a really thorny one that gets discussed in Midrash over and over again, because and the part of the answer is perhaps that one drinks the water and accepts that the choice is to live. So I think both possibilities lie inside what I wrote there.
Interesting.
But it's a thorny problem. This Talmudic question of what to do if you're in the desert. Because what follows that, I think, in the essay is that I am in the desert. I ask this question: is the desert a dusty memory, not a place? So then I say that I am in the desert, the search for water constant, like my tears that flow unbidden and unforgiving. They come like the tide without an ocean. I see the paradox and I live inside it. My son, like me, was drawn to the water and never lived far from it. In Australia, he lived on his vineyard with an apex where he sat and could see the ocean. He kept the sea always in his view, even when he didn't dare venture into it for fear of sharks. So the ocean is there, the water is there, to drink, to not to drink, whatever. But ultimately, we choose to create, to engage, and anyone who is engaging in whatever they are doing is creating. I don't classify creativity in the small category of writing or painting, but the bricklayer builds, the accountant builds. Everyone who engages to help another person is engaged in the process of creativity and the process of moving life forward.
I'm so glad that you share that. I think a lot of people feel that, oh, I don't have what Mary has. I can't put words together, or I can't paint what I feel inside. But I think it can be any act that
Absolutely.
quiets our mind and gives voice to our heart.
Also the curious act.
Yes.
Of asking will I drink the water? Will I give the water? And what will I do with the water? The curiosity, the act of curiosity. How will I engage?
Exactly. Even though it's going to be thorny. Even though it's thorny, I'm going to engage.
Even though it's thorny, even though it's messy, even though it's going to hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
The sound for the week.
And that we laugh, and that here we sit, 4 women together, with smiles on our faces in the face of what I have sent to you. My heart thanks you. So,
Mary, I'm to me, I'm inspired to do this more. I feel like there are more opportunities for the courage that everyone has, and maybe we're all introverts, to gut themselves and share that publicly on Substack.
Engage with some literary rigor. That's also, I see that as real potential here. And I just thank you, Kimberly, for putting this together with Mary and Veronika. I just think it's so valuable.
Yeah. Beautifully stated. Beautifully stated.
Yeah. Veronika, I don't know are you able to connect here? I see you. Yeah.
We wave across the sea to Portugal.
Your presence, your presence has been felt here. deeply. And I love that, Veronika, you share so much about this horizontal space, moving out of the anthropocenic, is that a word? Anyway, the Anthropocene, where everything is hierarchical. And now we are in this, moving potentially into this symbiotic space where human beings can recognize that the good and the bad can sit right next to each other and serve one another and hold a space for one another. So even in your silence today, Veronika, you are holding a beautiful space in
Indeed.
yeah. So
Indeed.
let's, I know we have just a couple minutes, but I want to ask one last question to you, Mary, because, who knows who's going to be reading this? Maybe someone that is in the deep early stages of their own grief. I want you to just offer something. What do you hope that your readers will take away from you as they enter into their own journeys of grief?
That you are joined with me in the lifeboat that connects us.
Yeah. Beautiful.
A little bit of paradox in that line, but I think it'll hold, as the lifeboat will hold, and will be pulled to you who read this.
Mm-hmm.
We are connected.
It is the necessary paradox. If anyone tries to navigate loss without the paradox, it just doesn't work. The bottom falls out. The lifeboat sinks. So
You are the line that pulls me in. And you two have been that for me today, and Veronika as well. I thank you so. I cannot say it enough.
Only connect.
Only connect.
Thank you.
Lovely. Well, I'll close this up, even though Veronika just joined again. But I will, poor sweetheart. She's just not give up. Man, that woman has persisted. I think I've let her in through the waiting room. I've lost count, but maybe 30 times through this meeting.
Elvis Costello song. Anyway, wait, isn't there an Elvis? Anyway, there's a song, Veronika. Anyway.
Oh yeah. Veronika.
Well, there's another song, and that's another song in which I closed the eulogy when I buried my son, and that's Neil Young's "Sleeping with Angels."
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's the last song that my son and I listened to before he died.
Oh, Mary.
Yes. There's a small thing to close on. Okay.
There's a small thing to close on. Thank you, beauties, for being here.